everyone. In today's video, we will be looking into tachyphylaxis and tolerance. Here's Rayan and Irene. What are they up to?
Have you been okay this last month, Ryan? It seems that I have not seen you for a while.
Not really, Irene. My medication and I are having a serious relationship crisis.
I'm sorry, I don't remember. What is your medication for?
Well, I started with antidepressants and initially they worked, but yeah, gradually they stopped.
Wait, is that a normal thing?
I have no idea, but my meds are giving me more drama than my last breakup.
Oh,
Oh, Rayan, don't worry. Perhaps understanding tolerance can give you an explanation.
I say so as well. Sometimes, when people take the same dosage over time, it will stop having the same effect, and that is because of tolerance. Tolerance is the phenomenon whereby larger doses of a drug are required over time in order to produce the same pharmacological effect. In other words, tolerance is the reduced reaction to a drug that happens as the body gets used to it through repeated use. In addition, tolerance usually takes days to weeks to occur and may be reversible following a period of withdrawal. An example of tolerance is when alcohol is used for a long time. Larger and larger doses must be taken to produce the same effects. It is important to note that tolerance is not suddenly there, but is gradually built up after repeated exposure to the drug.
but wait, did this happen suddenly or gradually over time? Let's ask Ryan. Ryan, do you remember how your medication stopped working?
Let me think. Oh, yeah, sorry. Now that I think about it, it wasn't gradual. They stopped working suddenly.
In that case, it might be tachyphylaxis rather than tolerance. In summary, as a defense mechanism, the ability of a drug to produce a response will drop due to an overstimulation of this drug. However, it can happen rapidly, as you can see in the graph, rather than gradually after repeated exposure, even sometimes with just an initial dose. This is known as tachyphylaxis. Tachy in Greek means shift, and phylaxis means guardian, protection. A major concern among scientists is that tachyphylaxis and tolerance are often interchanged in the scientific literature, complicating the study of their molecular mechanisms and hindering clinical understanding. Tachyphylaxis has been mainly studied in corticosteroids, asthma treatments, and antidepressant drugs. Certainly, antidepressant tachyphylaxis remains a relevant problem for complex patients suffering from depression, according to Gustavo Kimbers. Thus, the majority of tachyphylaxis research focuses on the treatment of depression. But what is happening in Ryan's body? Several mechanisms underlying tolerance are described, but those for tachyphylaxis are still unknown since its discovery. Shared mechanisms with both tolerance and tachyphylaxis has been suggested, along with other proposed mechanisms unique for tachyphylaxis.
Before delving into the mechanisms, let me introduce some key terms. First, psychological tolerance. This is when you have to take more of a drug to keep feeling its mental rewards. This is common with pain medication. Second, physiological tolerance. This is of two kinds, pharmacodynamic tolerance and pharmacokinetic. Let's start with pharmacodynamic tolerance. What's pharmacodynamics? Good question. When we talk about pharmacodynamics, we're referring to the mechanisms and effects of medications within the body. Some medications bind to a specific receptor on their target cell, activating the receptor, hence being an agonist. The receptor initiates a cascade of intracellular second messengers undergoing a change in shape or activity, leading to modification in the cell's function.
Oh, but keep it short.
Don't interrupt me. The key to understanding tolerance and tachyphylaxis lies in the drug-receptor interaction. So, how does tolerance and tachyphylaxis take place? First, a decrease in the number of receptors. Chronic exposure to agonists can cause a decrease in the number of receptors. This can be achieved in two main ways, either by downregulation of receptors, meaning that the synthesis of new receptors is decreased, or secondly, through internalization of the receptors leading to their degradation in lysosomes. This leads to a decrease in the overall response to the drug, meaning a higher dose is now required to achieve the same effect as before. Let's dig a little deeper into receptor internalization now. So endocytosis can take place in different ways, and the most common type is clathrin-mediated endocytosis. The clathrin coat is a lattice of proteins that will aid in invaginating the membrane, hence forming a vesicle. This vesicle will later be degraded inside the cell. Another common type of receptor internalization is ubiquitin-dependent internalization. In this type, the ubiquinated receptor will be endocytosed and transported to the endosome for it to be degraded as well.
Alternatively, the receptors may be modified where they are uncoupled from their intracellular signaling pathway, meaning they can't activate the secondary messenger proteins anymore. This type of response is very rapid and mainly causes tachyphylaxis. When exposed to high doses of an agonist, G-protein coupled receptors, or GPCRs for short, get phosphorylated by G-protein coupled receptor kinases. Subsequently, proteins called arrestins bind to the phosphoryl groups, inhibiting the receptor from activating neighboring guanine nucleotide binding proteins, commonly known as G proteins. Simultaneously, arrestins also tag the receptors for endocytosis, reducing the number of receptors on the cell membrane. Tachyphylaxis and tolerance can also arise from the exhaustion of intermediate messenger molecules. Consider amphetamine as an example. Typically, it induces the release of neurotransmitters such as dopamine, serotonin, and noradrenaline from nerve terminals into the synaptic cleft. However, neurotransmitter stores are finite and persistent amphetamine use can deplete these reserves. Consequently, with repeated and rapid usage, amphetamine may lose its efficacy in influencing nerve terminals to the same extent.
But what about pharmacokinetics? Well, it has to do with the processes a drug undergoes within the body, including absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion, otherwise together known as ADME. We will first tackle physiological adaptations inside the body and how this affects the medication's effects. To explain this, we will take the example of diuretics, which are medications used to decrease the water reabsorption in the kidneys, hence lowering blood pressure. However, with prolonged use, the effectiveness of these medications will decrease significantly. But why is that? What happens is that the body will try to adapt to this change in blood pressure by ramping up the activity of the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. This way, it is maintaining a relatively higher blood pressure in the body. And this is an example of how the body is adapting to a medication. In the second idea, we will talk about the increased metabolic breakdown of drugs, meaning there will be a decrease in the amount of drug reaching the target site. In addition, this rate at which the drug is cleared from the body may also play a role in how quickly tachyphylaxis develops. How is this achieved? Well, it is done by the production of multiple enzymes inside the liver. These enzymes will later be able to bind and metabolize the drug molecules, hence decreasing their concentration inside the body.
Now that you have a comprehensive understanding of tolerance and tachyphylaxis, you will agree that they present significant challenges in drug treatment. To further understand how this problem is currently being overcome, let me introduce an important concept: dose dependent. If someone is experiencing tolerance to a drug, they may increase the dose to produce the same effect. That means that this dose dependent mechanism, which is not a sustainable solution due to potential risks derived. In the case of tachyphylaxis, a larger dose may not restore the desired effect, so tachyphylaxis is not a dose-dependent mechanism.
So, what are Rayan's options to address this challenge? Well, there are several strategies in place to address both tolerance and tachyphylaxis. Switching the drug, implementing drug holidays. Some scientists suggest a quirky concept called having drug holidays. For instance, for patients dealing with depression, it's recommended to take a break for about 3 to 4 weeks to restore receptor sensitivity. Reducing the current drug dose, and utilizing combinatorial strategies with different drugs by choosing the most effective combination at any given moment. However, there are challenges with some of these current solutions. For example, completely discontinuing pharmacological treatment might not be clinically feasible for some patients due to their medical conditions, and certain patients respond only to specific drugs, making it impractical to switch medications.
So what is the current research focused on? There's research being conducted to study tachyphylaxis and antidepressants. Some findings show that switching to dual reuptake inhibitors reduce the occurrence of tachyphylaxis. Dual reuptake inhibitors work by inhibiting not only serotonin reuptake but norepinephrine also. So if tachyphylaxis occurs for serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors can still function. Scientists have also been studying histamines. Yes, you've heard of them before in antihistamines, the medication you take when you have allergies. Histamines and its receptors seem to have a role in psychiatric conditions like depression. There are even approved antidepressants that interact with histamine receptors in the central nervous system. The mechanisms of tachyphylaxis are still not clearly understood, and research in this field will further our knowledge about this condition. Additionally, studying both tachyphylaxis and tolerance with respect to transmitters and receptors has the potential to improve treatments for depression and other such conditions, thereby helping countless people. Before we wrap up, I hope this video helped you understand tolerance, tachyphylaxis, their mechanisms, and a little bit about the current challenges being faced and their solutions.